Some guests walk into a conversation and you just know this one is going to stay with you. Tesha McCord Poe is one of those people. She's the founder and CEO of Joy Raising, which is a consultancy built around the idea that fundraising doesn't have to feel like extraction, it can feel like an invitation. She's helped organizations raise over $100 million. She's a TEDx speaker, an author, a lawyer, a former school administrator, and someone who has lived through profound loss and chosen actively, repeatedly, and intentionally to lead with joy anyway. In this conversation, we talk about growing up on the south side of Chicago and what it taught her about the gap between people who have resources and the people who deserve them. We talk about what it actually means to build inclusive philanthropy from the inside out, including a moment where she was the one doing the excluding. We talk about how joy isn't something that necessarily comes naturally to her, but it is something that she fights for every day. And we talk about a conversation at a gate in an airport with her father that still guides the way that she shows up. If you work in the nonprofit world, if you raise money, if you lead people, if you're just trying to figure out how to keep going when the world feels heavy, this conversation is for you. I'm Max Kringen, and this is Tell All the Podcast.
Over the rainbow.
Tesha McCord Poe, welcome to Tell All the Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, I'm so dang excited. I remember we met because I slid into your DMs after hearing you on the We Are for Good podcast. And I was just like, I don't know who this bubbly creature is, but I want to know more about her and I want to know more of her story and I want to be in her orbit. So thanks for answering that DM.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't just any DM. And I think we're all used to getting a lot of messaging these days, but it was so thoughtful. And I felt the same way, like someone who would take the time to listen all the way through a podcast and then reach out and respond in the way that you did. I was just really excited to know you.
Oh my goodness. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Tesha, for people who don't know you, who is Tesha?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that my name is just, it was chosen for me by my parents. My middle name is Joy, and it's never lost on me that they very specifically chose my name. I'm named after my godmother, who her name was Tesha, and she changed her name to Tesha because she didn't like her given name. And so I grew up as little Tesha and she was big Tesha. And most people don't know that, but so my name and my middle name were so intentional. And so I start with that because I think it has guided me to feel like I show up in the world with a name that is sometimes people don't know how to pronounce. I've gotten often enough, oh, that's beautiful, where I feel like really proud of it. And so I'm someone who stands on the shoulders of people who loved me before they knew me, who fought and just went through a lot as a Black American in this country. Coming from enslaved people, like that's such a rich history that I'm proud of. And it fuels me to believe that not only are great things possible for me, but I also have a responsibility to try and make things possible for other people. That has been with me my whole life.
What a beautiful introduction that covers so much in such a short amount of time. And I think like really speaks to your heart and speaks to the way that you show up. And so let's dig in right there actually and jump into kind of like question number one, I guess technically question number two. But so your company is called Joy Raising, which I friggin' love. Take me back to before Joy Raising, before the titles. Like, where did you grow up and what did the world teach you about that gap between the people who have resources and the people that deserve them? Because just in that little intro, it's clear that's what you're fighting for. So tell us more.
Yeah. So I won the parent lottery. I say it all the time. I was born to two educators who believed that I deserved and could have what anybody else could do. And they didn't have the money to make that happen, but they made it happen. So, for example, I'm a native New Yorker, born in the Bronx. I went to school at an independent school called Fieldston Ethical Culture School. This is a place where kids are known and seen and valued. And I still have memories from the learning that I got there through third grade. And then I went on to another school at University of Chicago, the lab schools, again, where kids are known and valued and expected to reach their potential, but not on their own. They're given the resources to do that. That's how I was set up to be in this world. Well, at the University of Chicago, I live 3 blocks from campus, and in the surrounding neighborhoods is called the Black Belt. And these were Black neighborhoods where there were brilliant people who often didn't have the resources they needed to fully reach their potential. And I would go to dance classes with my sister and church on the weekends with folks. And these kids were as smart as we were, but they didn't have the same kind of access. And so that made me curious at first. And then it made me angry when I understood why that was. And so I ended up in New York at Barnard College. So in Harlem, we don't call it that, but it's Harlem. And I wanted to find a college where I could go to church on Sunday, get my hair done at a place that knew how to do my hair, and could have fun on the weekends. And so it wasn't going to be somewhere that didn't kind of prepare for me to be there. And so that's what I found. And so I got curious. I started studying cycles of poverty. I concluded in my studies that you could break cycles of poverty through entrepreneurship and education in a generation. I was particularly interested in this around women and children. And so I decided to pursue studying entrepreneurship and trying to figure out, how do I help people to create their own enterprises? But I also wanted to be a mother. So my journey, my career journey, makes sense only to me. And I would be lying if I told you I had it figured out beforehand. But what I did was try to create the pathway with, how do I want to spend my days? What credentials and experience do I need to have access? And what impact do I want to make? So joy raising is the culmination of all of that. I won't take you through a lot more of it, but I will say that I use Joy as my middle name. I felt like I could own it. It can feel soft to people and unserious, but I thought about what I wanted to do. And I wanted to create a company where we were raising more money with more people and more joy. I didn't want people to run from fundraisers. I didn't want fundraisers to feel like they were doing something they shouldn't be doing. And I wanted more people who were not traditionally in this space to be able to find their place in it. And that's what I've been able to do. And it has that added effect that the organizations that I'm working with are making lives better. I get to be a little part of that. And it is so rewarding to have a little place in big things that are happening.
There's so much to unpack from that. And I have like at least 3 or 4 questions from it.
Okay.
But I think one of them to start with is, you've talked about this twice now, right? Joy is literally your middle name in addition to your business name, which I love. You built a whole company around this idea of joy and that like permission to let people feel something that they don't need to be embarrassed by, right? And they can take it seriously, and joy and like serious causes can like coexist together, which I love. I'm curious though, with joy as a middle name, it almost creates an expectation that is like really easy for you to tap into. So I'm curious, has joy always been easy for you to access, or is it something that you've had to fight for? And what's the maybe sub relationship between you and that word?
Yeah. So what's so interesting is that in the past 6 years, I've had to choose joy. I've had 2 profound losses in my life, and my father and my husband, 6 months apart from each other. And so I had to decide. I was getting as a gift, It's Okay, the book, It's Okay If You're Not Okay. And the title alone terrified me, because I have 2 children, and then it's not okay if I'm not okay, because they need to know that they can be okay. And we need that to happen. And so I had to figure out, well, how do I find my joy? How do I figure out how to get up again and again? And so what I realized is that it can be a choice, just like kindness can be a choice. We forget that sometimes, right? Often, especially when it's not being directed at us, we actually can respond to aggression with kindness. I just did it this morning, actually. and so that's a muscle that you can build. First of all, the muscle of knowing that you have choice when it feels like you don't, but also to choose to be kind, to choose to have joy. That does not mean it's easy. It is not, but it's a practiced skill, I'll say, that I aim for, right? And so there are times, for example, how do you get to do that? Where I will have had a conversation with a friend or a colleague, and it's the same conversation, it's negative, and I've said my piece, I've tried to support, but we keep having this conversation, and I'll tell them, you got 2 good times left to have this conversation with me. And then after that, you can continue to have it, but you're going to have it with somebody else, because I've got to protect my well-being, quite frankly. And so I'm willing to get in the dirt with you and struggle with something. I'm not saying I don't want to hear the bad things. Absolutely. But I have an orientation towards, okay, what are we going to do about it versus wallowing in it? And I have to have that conversation with myself sometimes. Okay, Tesha, you've complained about this a couple times now. Stop talking to yourself about it and go do something about it.
So what does that practice look like? Because, and I think this is a recurring thing that I've seen and heard in your podcast and stuff too, is like you create really purposeful boundaries.
Yes.
And like, it sounds like you also create those for yourself. And so I'm curious, knowing that like most of the folks who are listening to this podcast are mission-driven leaders, nonprofit executive directors, fundraisers, those types of folks. How do they start the practice of that like healthy boundary creating when they're so used to being kind of a sounding board for anything that anybody is feeling, but like to protect themselves and to protect their organizations, they need to create some of those boundaries. What does that look like, sound, smell like to
Yeah. I think it's paying attention to yourself and your body. And I absolutely don't come at this as an expert. I have more work to do. Life's a journey. And when you're done learning, you're done, right? So don't ever stop learning.
Amen.
So it's about, how do I feel? Like people would say, before I actually started Joy Raising or before it was a full-time, people would say, you light up when you talk about it. And that was like confirmation for me that I was onto something that meant something important to me. And then the fact that other people were responding to it was like, okay, we've got it there. So how do you do it? I think it's being willing to set those boundaries. So Brene Brown, in her book about the heart, she has a quote from someone who I never remember this woman's name, and I always feel bad about it, but I remember the quote, which is, boundaries are the space between you and I that allows me to love us both. Right? And so the point is, I love you. So this is not about me not wanting to participate or be committed or do the work, but it's about me knowing myself enough and knowing what's before us enough to know what I can and am willing to give to it.
Oh, amen. That's so good. And I think Atlas of the Heart, right?
Atlas of the Heart.
Atlas of the Heart. Excellent book. I've reread it a couple of times now, and I love that it truly is creating space for us to love both. And it's such a beautiful sentiment. I love Mama Brene. Like, she can do almost no wrong in my eyes. But sometimes those little reminders, those little pieces of wisdom are so great to be able to just pull out of the back pocket, right? Because it can sometimes feel like boundaries are creating space between us, but that space is purposeful.
Yep.
Okay. So you've been, if I have this right, you've been a lawyer, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've been a journalist, a banker, a school administrator, a partridge in a pear tree. And then you built your own thing after this. And so I'm curious, as you look back at all of those stops along the way, including the one becoming a mom and those, what do you think that they were actually preparing you for?
They were preparing me to create value for others. So I also did a JD MBA, right? So be a lawyer, I had to go to law school, but I also went to business school. What I got out of that was that just because you want to do something doesn't mean that the market is going to be there for it, right? So if I want to be an entrepreneur, it's not that I want to have a hobby that people pay for, which is what I think a lot of people think about initially. It's about, I have a value to offer the marketplace that I'm going to make available, right? And so it took me a while to figure out what that would be. And so what Joy Raising is the culmination of all of those things you talk about that you mentioned, including being a mother. Being a mother was what drove me to make so many of the choices, wanting to be a mother and then actually being a mother. drove me to make so many of the choices that I made. And it was hard. Like, even with so much preparation, you're never truly ready. But for example, I'd gone to a women's college. We had a lot of, this is in the 90s, a lot of women who would come back and speak to us, and they would say, if there's one thing I would tell you, if you intend to be a parent, I waited too long. I thought I could wait longer to start that journey. And then I came into fertility issues. And this is before we had a lot of the advancements that we've had, but still, I don't think it's different. So because that was so core to what the experience that I wanted as a part of my life, I had my first child at 30. Now, that is not a young mom, but it was younger than most of my friends, right? And I knew that was a value that I had. That is something that I wanted. So what has all this done for me? It's given me the wherewithal to decide that I have choice and that I should figure out what I value, figure out how I want to spend my days, who I want to interact with, and so I've just taken those experiences and tried to make something of it as far as it reflects on what it is that I want to do in this world. And my kids are out of the house now. And so when that's happened, I was like, this is part of what joy raising came from. Is like, I need an identity other than them. I worked where they went to school for most of their life. I was within 30 seconds of my kids most of their lives growing up, which was such a blessing. Are you kidding me? It was amazing. But I definitely had to have boundaries there, right? We all had to have boundaries around that.
My dad is a school superintendent. My mom was a paraeducator, so the boundaries there, I'm not sure that we were great at them, but I think we probably would have all benefited from there being boundaries there. We also lived across the street from the school, so
wow.
there was no getting away with anything.
Yeah.
I want to talk about joy raising a little bit because I think one of the things that a lot of the listeners to this might be thinking about is like, fundraising is hard. Right? Like, in the idea of, there are so many tactics and there are so many tips and tricks and strategists out there and people that have another framework. And if we just like layer this framework on, and if you just do all these tactics, then it works. I think joy raising, excuse me, joy raising feels different in the way that you approach it. So can you tell us, how do you approach it? And like, maybe if somebody is needing a little bit of a leg up, if they need a little bit of help, how do they go about looking for somebody like Tesha to support them?
Yeah. So I was terrified of fundraising before I started. And even after I started, I remember going to this training. It was a week long. It was at Dartmouth. At the end of it, it was like a sponge. It was before I started officially working in the space, but knew I was going to. And I was leading a shop. I started out leading a shop, which is crazy, but I had a boss who really believed in me. And I actually just gave the keynote at their fundraiser, 300 people. And not only was I not nervous, I was so excited. Like, it was crazy how much fun I had doing that, which is such a full circle moment because I literally was terrified when I first started doing this. And so I think what you have to do is decide that it's worth it, right? That the fear, the courage it takes, the potential for rejection, the preparation, that it's got to be worth it. And so once you've been a part of something that might turn into a library that kids wouldn't have otherwise, turn into access, turn into a cure, once you have a little taste of that, then it's hard to deny yourself of it again. And the good news is that there are so many resources. Like, the way I kind of found my own space is because I had such generous colleagues who told me how they did it. And what I did was say, okay, I understand why that works for you. Here's how I might say that a little differently. Or here's how I think, or I'm going to take these couple of things and make it, something that feels good to me to do. And so there's some fundamentals for sure. When I first started out in this space, it felt like learning a foreign language. And I speak French and Spanish. And so I understand, like, what does it mean when you can say something in a different way and it has equal value? Right. And so I approached it with openness in that way. But I also know that language learning is a lot more fun the more words you have to use. So I was patient with it and said, I need to learn this so that I can start speaking it and go deeper with it. And so I trusted that process, and I was like a sponge learning. And so I would say to someone who feels like this is really hard, figure out what's hard about it. Figure out where your superpowers. I often ask people, what is your superpower? And are you allowed to bring it to work with you? Because if you're not, right, then that means like you are up against some, imagine like bursting with ability and you can't let it out. Right. And so thinking about, well, what is your superpower? Can you use it? What do you want your days to look like? For some people, I've worked with people like this who are so valuable. You don't want them talking to anybody because they piss people off when they talk and the way that they interact, because maybe they're socially awkward or maybe they don't have the boundaries that they might, but they are brilliant when it comes to research or doing something that doesn't involve other people. There's a space for them in this work. So find your space and be honest with yourself about what feels good to you and what works for other people, and then talk to people. Before I started Joy Raising, I talked to a lot of people in my life who had started something or had made a big pivot. And the question I asked them was, how did you know you could trust the dream you had in your heart to take it to the marketplace? And they thought about that, and they always had a different answer. And the answers were like, it wouldn't let me go. Every night I would think about it. Every morning I would think about it. I just had to try. Another person said, well, I lost my job. And so all of a sudden I had time. And so I thought I might as well try now because I know I'm going to have to get another job. Let me try now. And it turned out that this was my new job, right? For me, in part, it was, I broke my ankle and I had to sit still. I was supposed to have surgery. I couldn't have surgery because I had blood clots. So I was on blood thinner. So I couldn't have surgery. So they said, you have to sit still for 6 weeks in this cast. I was not bored for not one moment of that 6 weeks, not one, because I was this busy mom and wife and like running around, had a big job, and it was crazy. I got to rest, but also that's when I conceived of Joy Raising. My sister sent me a journal and it said, make lemonade. And I just went at it and just figured it out. So everybody has that moment if you let it, if the dream is well defined. And I don't mean that you've gotten everything figured out, because I certainly don't, but it is clear enough that you can build on it and you can talk about it. And also you want to be careful about who you share your dreams with, because not everyone is here for it. Not everyone can receive it and nurture it and tend to it in the way that you need. But yeah, that's what I would offer.
Again, there's so much to unpack there. I think the question in front of us, though, is if Joy Raising came from you breaking your ankle, right? And right before we hopped on when we were in the green room, you said that you recently broke your foot. So maybe what's the next big thing for Joy Raising? Like, what is the next thing now that you're forced to sit? And the universe has a kind of a cruel way of telling you to slow down a little bit, like rude, first of all. Like, you can just put me on a beach or something, but instead we break your bones. But what do you think is next?
Honestly, I think that it's still brewing. I think I spent last year and literally had amazing trips, just amazing trips to gorgeous places that I really enjoy. And that was really useful, fun, all the things that you would expect. I think I needed this time to slow down, get things in order, and then figure that out. So I would say I don't have that answer yet, but I'm readying for that answer. And I've been here long enough to know that there is an answer. I'm getting excited about what it might be. But honestly, I'm also really happy with what I'm doing right now. And so I'm thinking about, I'm of an age where it's okay, let's have another good decade to work. And then hopefully you'll be in a position to decide whether you want to continue to work. That's what's on my heart right now. How do I set myself up to be able to have that choice in 10 years?
Love that. One of the things that you've talked about before in podcasts on your website is this idea of inclusive philanthropy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want you to make inclusive philanthropy real for our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about a moment in your career where you watched fundraising exclude someone and how that moment changed you to do it differently.
Okay. The moment I'm going to tell you might surprise you. I created that moment. It was a moment where there was a big ask to be made, and I excused myself, even though I was the chief advancement officer, excused myself from the ask and said, oh no, let's have this person do it. And it was because I had this internalized idea that the donors, prospective donors, wanted to see someone who looked like them asking, even though I knew these people, that it was appropriate to have someone of similar affluence ask them. And so I excused myself. What happened was the donor said later to a colleague, to someone on my team, why wasn't Tesha in that ask? We would have had our questions answered and we probably would have given more. And so that was huge to me because I realized that I was doing something for reasons I wasn't even conscious of it, like really conscious of what I was doing. And so I decided that never again was I going to count myself out of an ask if it was not appropriate for me to be there. Now, I don't need to be in every ask. I didn't have the ego around that, but I was allowing outside factors to get in the way of what was best. So that's my example of that. I could give you so many more traditional examples of that, but that's the one that really stuck with me, that I too was doing it, but I was looking for other people to stop doing.
Okay, so let's play this out. Let's like role play this a little bit, because we have, in addition to like the executive directors that we have, like within our ecosystem here in Fargo, we have a lot of young development directors and young marketing folks or communications folks in nonprofit storytelling. And so I would imagine that they run into a similar thing, like being just like young. And even the ones that I'm thinking of, like they're young women, right? To what you just said, like probably they're definitely not of the same like affluence that they're seeking out. And so how do you coach that young fundraiser into that mindset that, hey, actually I belong here. I'm uniquely equipped to do this thing.
Yeah. So I think it's about preparation. I think it's about finding points of connection. So what I know is that while I might not have the affluence of someone I might be asking a gift of, I certainly have the education. There's not more money that you could spend on education to get better than what I've had. That is a privilege. That is a lucky chance. That is also true. Okay. So I can lean on that in terms of confidence and exposure and knowledge and all the things. So it's like, can you find points of connection with people? And if it's not personal, it's to your mission, to what it is that you're inviting them to be a part of, to those values that you share, right? So it's not that you agree on every point, but there should be some alignment. So you're looking for the alignment. And then in terms of preparation, you do ask yourself, how is it that I get to be in this room? And that might be because I have an experience that's really important for people to hear about. It might be there are lots of reasons why you should be in the room, but being reflective of that and then accepting that, okay, I should be here. Okay, so then how am I going to use the time really well? I think that's important. If we don't feel like we're using someone's time well, we're not going to come off as confident in asking for it or using it. So I think for people who are younger, newer in their roles, not sure, it's, well, maybe let's narrow the scope of what we're trying to accomplish in the first meeting, for example. And maybe it's asking more questions than answering, right? And so knowing that you're in there, maybe you're in there because you're willing to work harder than anybody else who is willing to show up. That's valuable, right? And so just figuring out how do I get to be in this situation? What do I bring to it? What do I want from it? And what can I give them from it? That gives a whole lot of confidence to showing up.
What can I give? What can I give to this conversation? What can I give to this donor? What is the connection that I can make? Brilliant. Like that's super smart, right? It's relationship building 101,
Yeah.
right? More so than fundraising 101, which fundraising is relationship building.
Yes.
Tesha, I feel like we could be talking about things for a real long time, but we have to kind of come in for a landing. And so a couple of kind of final questions. One, we believe stories are the most powerful way to shape our lives, right? And they truly shape the way that we show up. And so I'm curious, what's one story from your life or work that still guides how you show up today?
Yeah. Well, this happened a while ago. It was before 9/11, when we couldn't have people who didn't have a ticket go to the gate. So it was when you could have people go to the gate with you, even if they weren't going to fly in the plane.
Mm.
And I was leaving Chicago, heading to California to take the California bar, notorious along with New York for being really hard to pass. I had prepared all summer, and yet I was terrified. I was scared. My dad went with me to the gate. We were sitting there, and all of a sudden I started crying. He said, "What are you crying for?" My dad, an educator, can handle tears. He just wanted to know, "What are you crying for?" I said, "Dad, I'm so scared." He said, "What are you scared of?" He's been studying all summer. "What are you scared of?" I said, "What if I don't pass?" He said, "I'm pretty sure they'll let you take it again." I said, "Yeah, he said they'll let you take it." I said, "Yeah, they'll let me take it again." But they put in the newspaper the names of people who've passed. So if I don't pass and my name's not in there, everybody's going to know. He said, "Is that all?" He said, "Okay, what happens if they know?" I said, "They know." He said, "Okay, do you lose your job?" I'm like, "No, my job's going to give me another chance to do it." He said, "Okay, so what happens?" I said, "I'll be embarrassed." He said, "Is that all? Embarrassed? Oh, we can handle that." And it was just this profound moment where, out of just unfiltered love, he was saying what he knew in his heart, and what he wanted me to know was that you have to get on this plane and you have to sit those 3 days to take that test. You're prepared to do it. And the worst thing that can happen from it, we can actually handle. Right? Because that was ego. So many lessons that I got from that, but one of the ones that I talk about a lot is about ego. So I could decide that embarrassment was worth my tears. Embarrassment that hadn't even happened yet. The threat of embarrassment was worth my tears. That's what I had decided that day. But instead, in the many lessons that he gave me, that was one of the most profound. You were making this choice. You were choosing for that to defeat you before it's even happened. And I took that with me on the plane, and I sat for that thing. I said, "I'm doing this once," and I'm so happy to share that I passed it the first time. It was the preparation that did it, but it also was that conversation with him that let me know that what you fear is actually not to be feared.
That's beautiful. Your dad sounds like a wise man.
He was great. We could do a whole nother conversation about Joe McCord. Yeah. I have a tattoo that's to his honor. It's the only tattoo I have. And when he passed, I got it within 2 weeks of him passing. And I get to honor him and remember him and celebrate him every day.
Well, I would love another conversation about Joe someday, because love that perspective. What is the worst thing that happens? And when we boil it down, like embarrassment, all right.
Yeah.
I've been embarrassed before.
Yeah.
So our final question for you, Tesha, is what is one simple good thing that you'd leave people with? This could be a piece of wisdom or a reminder that helps them lead with purpose.
Okay. This is really important to me right now, because there's a lot going on in the world, and there's a lot of reasons to be scared and down. And I found this in the pandemic too. And so what I would say is that if you have the capacity for joy right now, don't you dare keep it to yourself.
Oh, say it again.
If you have the capacity for joy right now, don't you dare keep it to yourself, because there are people who do not have that, and they need you.
Yes. Oh, that is such brilliant advice. That is brilliant advice, because it is so wildly true in this like crazy, slightly messed up world that is just full of people trying to figure out how we're so different. Like we have so much more in common, right? And I think the people that are like those torch bearers of joy are the people that we need to be lifting up. Brilliant. Tesha, if people want to connect with you, if they want to connect with Joy Raising, if they need a little bit more joy in their lives, how do they connect with you?
Yeah, there are two great ways. One is at the website, and it's joy-raising.com. The dash is really important. It was what was available when I went to find the URL, but it also represents the dash poem, which says, when we die, we have a tombstone. It has the year we were born and the year that we passed away. Most of us don't choose those years. But the dash in the middle is what we choose over and over again. And so what are you going to do with your dash? Joy Raising is my dash. So joy-raising.com. And then I'm Tesha at Joy Raising. So please reach out. I love connecting with new people. It is one of the great benefits of doing this. And so I encourage people to reach out and connect with us.
Tesha, thank you so much for joining us on Tell Well the podcast. Thanks for your incredible wisdom that you shared. Thanks for sharing about inclusive philanthropy. And as much as anything, thanks for showing up with joy. Thanks for spreading your joy around and sharing some of it with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's a real privilege. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for spending some time with us today. I hope this conversation gave you something useful to take back to your work. If you're looking for more resources on storytelling, strategy, and building communications that actually move people to action, head on over to WeTellWell.com. We've got guides, case stories, and plenty of ways to dig deeper. And if you're at a point where you're ready to get serious about clarifying your message or telling your story in a bigger way, let's talk. You can book a planning call with our team right on the website. We'd love to hear what you're working on. One last thing. If this episode was helpful, share it with someone on your team or leave us a review. It really does help other mission-driven folks find the show. I'm Max Kringen. Thanks for listening to Tell Well the podcast. Now go tell your story well, because a well-told story can move your mission forward and change the world.